Okay, boy, there is, I honestly don't know why people choose to get upset about the stuff that they get upset over, but they do. And it seems silly to me, but go figure. We have had these 3 members of the military that have been dealing with war crime trials for many years now. We have covered all of them at some point in time, okay? President Trump has hinted that he was going to step in at some point with at least a couple of them, if not all of them, and he has. President Trump has granted clemency to 2 Army officers accused or convicted of war crimes and restored Navy SEAL Eddie Gallagher to the rank of Chief Petty Officer after he was docked a pay grade after being convicted of posing for a photo with a dead Islamic State fighter, the White House announced on Friday. This happened as we were on the air, I believe, after we left the air. Army First Lieutenant Clint Lorance could be released from a military prison at Fort Leavenworth, Kansas, as soon as Friday evening. He was, by the way, 6 years after being found guilty of second-degree murder. Major Matt Golsteyn, a former Green Beret, will have the murder charges against him dropped completely. By the way, the Lieutenant Lorance, he was on Fox and Friends this morning responding to Joe Biden, who had a really stupid tweet, but we'll get to that in a second. Today, President Donald J. Trump signed an executive grant of clemency, which is a full pardon for Army First Lieutenant Clint Lorance, an executive grant of clemency, full pardon for Army Major Mathew Golsteyn, and an order directing the promotion of Special Warfare Operator First Class Edward R. Gallagher to the grade of E7, the rank that he held before he was tried and found not guilty of nearly all of the charges against him, the White House said in a statement Friday night. For those of you who were listening to the show, you are also familiar that the Eddie Gallagher case featured a prosecutor who was removed for prosecutorial misconduct. And the prosecution team actually installed malware on the defense's computer system in order to go ahead and spy on them, which they totally pinky swear was an accident, because they were just trying to figure out who on their side was leaking information to the press. Sure. Anyway, he was found not guilty of all sorts of war crimes, and there was no other way for that to go because somebody else who took the stand admitted they were the one that killed the ISIS fighter in question. So you can't convict a man of murdering somebody that somebody has just testified they themselves did. The Navy last month denied a request of clemency and upheld a sentence to reduce the rank of decorated Navy SEAL Eddie Gallagher for posing with the corpse of an ISIS terrorist. A jury in July found Eddie Gallagher not guilty of war crimes. Even though Gallagher was cleared of the murder charges, the jury sentenced him to reduced rank and partial pay because he took a photo with a dead ISIS terrorist. Gallagher served 19 years in the U.S. Navy, 8 tours, 6 of which were as a Special Forces operator. He was ranked as the top SEAL chief in his platoon, ranked as the top SEAL platoon. Okay, so I'm quoting here. I don't know a lot about how the SEAL structure works, so my apologies to Navy people who might be upset with what I am saying. President Trump stepped in and used his power to right this wrong, and just like that, more of Obama's anti-America legacy got erased. Thank you, President Trump. Okay, so this has come from the Gateway Pundit, who's, again, obviously a very partisan website. So then you get Joe Biden, okay? Here's where Joe Biden comes into this whole thing. There's just some things you stay out of. Pete Buttigieg made this mistake when he said the president shouldn't step in with the Eddie Gallagher case or the case of the other guys, the 2 Army officers. He shouldn't step in when we had a conviction on one. We didn't have anything on the Gallagher case. And Pete Buttigieg was like, he shouldn't step in, blah, blah. And, of course, I had to point out that the only problem with saying that the president shouldn't intervene on this is that the president has the constitutional authority to step in. So when you run around and say that a president is not allowed to do this stuff, especially if you're touting your military service as an example of why that wouldn't happen and separation of powers and all that, it just doesn't make a lot of sense because, again, the president absolutely has the pardon authority for all federal crimes. Okay, that is in the United States Constitution. I posted that, by the way, to Joe Biden's Twitter post. So, and I'm doing it under a different account since my old normal account was banned from the Twitter sphere. So this is what Joe Biden tweeted out. Trump's intervention in the American military justice system, remember the president's official title is commander-in-chief, to pardon service members accused or convicted of war crimes betrays the rule of law. Actually, Joe, it doesn't betray the rule of law because it's in the United States Constitution that he can do this. It betrays the rule of law, the values that make our country exceptional, and the men and women who wear the uniform honorably. Keep in mind, Eddie Gallagher was found not guilty. Okay. He is not fit to command our troops. I've promised myself with the Lurker Twitter account that I have that I will not be posting a ton. Okay. But I had to respond to that. Article 2, Section 2, Clause 1. The president shall have power to grant reprieves and pardons for offenses against the United States except, except in cases of impeachment. Okay, there you go. It's pretty simple. But again, when you have the Democrats out there, they're just mad that he does anything. So super upset that he restored the rank to somebody who has been found not guilty of war crimes. But, the accused part was good enough for Joe Biden. Okay? Convicted of or accused of war crimes, Joe Biden said. Oh. Okay. We went over the case with the Army officers many times, and some pretty horrendous treatment against them. And many people felt were unjustified convictions based on what actually happened, okay? So including the murder of a pedophile and that sort of stuff. So there's a lot that's with it. We won't rehash it again. We've rehashed it many, many times over, and a lot of people felt that this was long overdue. So, and again, the lieutenant was in fact released on Friday, and he was on Fox and Friends responding to the former vice president's tweets about him. So very interesting. I would also like to remind everybody that when Obama was president, he granted clemency to known terrorists and people who were accused of treason. So if you served as vice president for a guy who provided clemency for terrorists and people who are, by a lot of counts, especially by the intelligence community, traitors to the United States, like the Bradley Chelsea Peyton Manning. That's it. Bradley Chelsea Peyton Manning, who a lot of people consider to be a traitor to the United States. If you grant clemency to them and others, then you don't really have a leg to stand on when it comes to somebody who's found not guilty in a court of law for war crimes. So anyway, we got more coming up. News Talk 95.3, Michiana's news channel.